New Zealand Tech Podcast, the voice of the tech community. Proudly supported by Umbrella Connect.
Tech Podcast. Today we're talking to Josh Faraimo, and we're going to be delving into the story.
Great work, mate. That pronunciation, you nailed that.
Oh, thanks, Josh. Thanks, Josh. So today we're going to hear all about Kwotimation and your story. Now, this is really fascinating for me because most often I've tended not to want to talk to startups that are quite early on in their journey because it's like, well, what's there going to be to tell us?
Yeah.
But actually, catching up with you earlier on in the week over lunch, it was like, oh man, there's actually a lot of interest. There's a lot of interesting stuff. Partly, you're good at telling the tales and just sort of breaking down some of the things you've been through. But this year, especially, I'm wanting on the New Zealand Tech Podcast for us to delve a lot more into startups, especially Kiwi startups, and get a handle on how it all works, how it fits together. What are the things that can trip you up? What are the things to be aware of?
A startup needs to start, Paul.
Yeah,
okay? It needs to start, and for us, it's been interesting. Coming from a sector where tech is not massive, and then to come into tech, and then be called a startup. I mean, we were talking earlier the weekend. You were saying that you had started a startup, but you just thought it was a business, and then everyone starts calling you a startup, right? And I think there's a similar situation for us as well. So, a business needs to start, and in the startup world, it's usually along the tech front. It's been a real journey. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I did that, which going on towards 20 years ago, there just weren't the resources today. But still, there hasn't been so much available even here in New Zealand from some perspective. So I really felt, hey, this is part of what we can do with the New Zealand Tech Podcast, is to start drilling and sharing a bit more of some of these stories. And look, across the New Zealand Tech Podcast, New Zealand Business Podcast, and some stuff that I think we're starting to feed out under a NZ Startups channel as well, or will be shortly. Cool. There has been some of these stories, but I think there's room to delve in more. So, really keen to hear what we can learn. Maybe we can sort of start at the beginning in terms of, what's your background in terms of, where you grew up and, how you got into the workforce and, how those dots join up. Yeah. Well, kia ora, Paul, and kia ora to all your listeners. Ki te taha o tuku pāpā, ko tuku lau te iwi, ko hakahoho te motu, ko pateha laimo te tangata, it's my nana, and ki te taha o tuku māma, ko whitireia te maunga, ko raukawa te moana, ko hongaweka te marae, ko Ngāti Tō Rangatira te iwi, and that's it. For me, my journey started, in Puriroa. I was born in Puriroa. My father was a police officer. My mother, she just worked in an office. And then my father, becoming a police officer in Puriroa, was arresting a lot of his whānau, and so he decided he wanted to move from Puriroa to the Wairarapa. He also had an opportunity to become a detective there. And so we moved to the Wairarapa, and I spent majority of my life there. So I grew up in a predominantly Pākehā area with farms, and there was a bunch of Māori people there too. And so, being a Pacific Islander over there was an interesting experience. And then from there, I ended up getting a passion for music, and I moved back to Puriroa to study music at Whitireia, and where I was doing my music degree. During that time, I did a few jobs, like I worked at I would work in the holidays. I would work in the hay fields as a hay stacker. Yeah. I would do petrol Pumping. I used to pump all the cars with the wrong types of petrol. So like some cars I'll fill up with 91, even though they were diesel, and some.
Was this your challenge to keep it interesting for yourself, or is this just not always paying attention because you had your mind on other things?
Oh, I don't know why. And I was playing rugby for the guy that owned the petrol station. I was playing rugby for his rugby club, and I think he just put up with me because he wanted me playing rugby for his rugby club. I then ended up getting into the trades. I started off as a painter and worked with this guy called Dave, and he got me interested in the trade scene. It was just so nice working with other men mainly men who were interested in the same things as me. And then I ended up seeing my cousin on site who was a tiler. And I said to him, hey, can I get a job with you? And he was like, yeah, if you come play rugby for my rugby club. So I ended up leaving, my former rugby club and went and worked with him. And it was some of the best years of my life, working with my cousin. We used to have so much fun together. And he said, you'd make a great tiler if you were any good at tiling. Because we used to get along so well, but I was so bad at tiling. I remember this one time there was all these pipes against the wall, and I was supposed to cut these tiles around the pipes. And there was also a light bulb, like a fluorescent light bulb that was leaning against the wall. And I thought it was a pipe, so I cut around the fluorescent light bulb.
Just been temporarily leaning against the wall. Just leaning against
the wall. And
Josh, that's classic.
My cousin comes back through, and I said, look, man, I cut it perfectly. Everything's perfect. And he was like, he looks at it, and he goes, man, it's awesome. And then he looks at me, says a few swear words, and he goes, that's a light bulb. And he reaches across, pulls out the light bulb, and that's where I kind of got my rep for being a good guy that he loved working with, but at the same time no good at tiling. And from there ended up moving to Auckland, a big bad Auckland. So I'm a country boy, moved to Auckland, did some music stuff up here, some musical performance stuff, and was also tiling. I wanted to get into sales at that point. So I decided that I would leave tiling and get into sales. And then one thing kind of led to another, and a builder said to me, hey, why don't you start up your own business, your tiling business? And he gave me some really good advice and just helped me kind of get started, give me a few jobs. And that's where I started running my tiling business. And then from the tiling business.
So how did that work? If if there was some challenges with your tiling, or was that? You worked through that stuff? Yeah.
I think I think everyone can relate to this. That when you are, working for somebody else, and the consequences aren't on you really, you're getting paid, on the hour. There just tends to be a lack of care, even though I wasn't intentionally not caring. I just think I didn't really care that much. But then when I started my own tiling business, I became very passionate about making sure I put my best foot forward. And so I ran this business for a couple of years, several years, and then I realised that I was really struggling with quoting, and that's where kind of the inception for software and how they could work with my tiling business came into play. I never thought we'd be a startup. I didn't even know what a startup was at that point. And I never thought we'd be, doing something that, like being a tech company, sharing technology with others. I just was trying to solve a problem that I was very intimate with. And so that's kind of like the background to,
That's great. Now. That's great. Well, and that's usually how these things come about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Through, having a problem and coming up with something to solve it so often. So where are you at now in the, well, actually, what was the next stage? So, you recognised, hey, there's an opportunity here. Technology can help. How did you figure out what you thought technology could help with? And a startup usually has, as with any business, it's got you need money, you need people, and so on. You've got a co-founder, right?
Yeah.
So what were the next sort of steps from hey, let's see what technology can do to help to.
So basically, how it even came was we had this guy who was doing SEO sales, and he came to our business and said, my business then was called Auckland Tile Design, and he said, hey, your Auckland Tile Design website doesn't track very well. Here's some websites we built for other companies, and these websites generate lots of good SEO, so when I was looking at his website portfolio, I saw this this quoting tool, but for another sector. And I said to him, I've been thinking about that. Could you create that for tiling? And he said, yes. I mean, there's obviously lots of complexities to it, but we could do it. Now, I was pretty cash positive at this time. We were running a successful business, had a few workers, and we were generating a bit of revenue, every year. And so I basically was on the verge of, do I go into property? And then this kind of came, and I said, I want that. And I thought the opportunity was going to be that I would be able to quote jobs on the internet, and if it was successful, I could end up sharing this technology in a bigger business model to basically kind of sell quotes to tilers. That's the way I was kind of thinking. I never thought, kind of the inception of like Kwotimation. I never thought of that idea. So
it was more that you would.
Solve a problem for myself if it worked,
but also help be able to draw in, because I noticed your domain name for your tiling business, and I don't know if it started out this way, but it was tiling.co.nz, right? So from that SEO or search engine optimization perspective, quite good. Someone searching for tiling, that's part of the picture that's going to help.
Cost me $70 too.
There you go.
Cost me $70.
How do you get a domain name like that for $70?
I mean, it's funny because people are going to listen to the story and they're going, man, this guy just got lucky like all the time, and it is truth to that. We literally, I'm on the internet one day. And just talking to the SEO guy, we're looking at doing this new business with technology. We haven't got it up and running yet. And I just think, what about a new domain?
How long ago was this? Would
have been about 2.5-ish years ago.
Okay, it's not that long.
Not that long ago. So we, tiling.co.nz, right? We think, okay, let's see if that domain is around. And couldn't find it on GoDaddy and search engines like that. But when I searched it on the internet, it came up with this like tiling.co.nz, right, the top there, and then it would just had this PayPal window, and it just said $70. So you pay $70 and you get the website. And to me, it just looks super suspicious. Like I was saying, some guy's got some scam going, and I've
never heard of somebody who owns a domain name selling it for $70.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I just think it's a scam. And then I walked downstairs from my office, which is in Orake, and I walked downstairs into the showroom that was there, and I thought to myself, wait a second, if I'm sitting around a barbecue one day and a tiler tells me he bought that domain for $70, how angry am I going to be about that I didn't jump at this? So I went upstairs and I thought, $70. Yeah. Let's just pay it and let's see what happens. I pay the money, and this guy rings me up and says, hey man, I've got to transfer the domain to you, and it's all legit. And so I get the domain, and that's when we launch tiling.co.nz. It has this 4-step system to get a quote, not just for your tiles, but also for your tiling labour. So we were able to combine these two together.
Wow.
and offer more convenience to our consumers.
Right. But you had this thought at that stage that maybe people would come into that site and you would do some of the work in Auckland and have some, if you got the quoting software that maybe people would come in and contract to you or whatever, you'd be able to dish work out around the country. That's exactly
the business model, yeah. And there is still, just loads of potential of the business being like that. But then there's actually my cousin, his name's Sione. He was in the army, and he's just got a mind that he works on like intelligence, right, in the army, and sets up missions, things like that. And he was really instrumental for me because he kind of said, what about if it could be like a white labeled software? What if it could be like this? And he offered me all these suggestions, and we would talk late into the night about these things. And because he had he's working in intelligence in the army. He has more exposure to technology, and also he likes kind of investing in different little bits and pieces. And so I think he's done his D&D on a few companies, and kind of just saw an opportunity that we kind of had in a sector which had very little innovation. And so
he's done his what on those companies?
Oh, sorry, yeah, the due diligence. Where he kind of just looks at a company and asks himself if this is a good investment for his business.
Yeah.
And so I think as he kind of looked into the background on these businesses, he learnt, and he empowered me with that knowledge. And so then we had this idea, like, okay, what if we did share this with tilers? What if we shared this with them? What could this look like? And I much rather, like, what I was thinking, I was like, I'd much rather do that, because then it empowers other tradesmen. Like, it empowers guys like me who are like spending tons of time quoting. And the bigger your business gets, the more quoting you're doing. And so,
and it's probably the thing you don't enjoy, right? Because you're actually not doing. You're not doing your trade. You're back doing all this sort of admin and
spending like an average quote takes you 3 hours of time, and you're doing 3 quotes a week if you're just working for yourself. So imagine if you got 5 guys, what that job's like. It's a full-time job just quoting. And so, for me, the opportunity with the software was allowing me not to have to travel to these guys' houses. And imagine this too, like the average tiler quotes 3 jobs a week and gets 1 of them. So 6 hours of his time is just to hear no. And for me, I wanted to solve that problem for my business, and we managed to solve it. And then it was, okay, then what's the business model? Yeah.
So, okay, so you want to, build this company, build this software. Who and what did you need to be able to get going?
So I guess in a lot of ways our prototype was tiling.co.nz. The software company, this web company, right, that came to me with the SEO problem.
Yep.
They ended up building the software. They had some developers in India. They developed the software. It worked really well. We were able to make sales on tiles. We were able to automate the quoting process. In the first 2 months, we made $370,000 of revenue. That is unheard of, in our sector. Just to launch something and then make that much money off just sharing convenience with your consumers.
Yeah.
But I think consumers were thinking to themselves, I have to spend 5 days getting a quote right now, if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I might ring up 5 tilers today and none of them come around.
Yeah.
And so for them, the convenience was not just that, but then add the tiles as well. Well, I can go into one service and in 5 minutes I can achieve what would usually take me 5 days. And so I think there was massive, value to the consumer.
So how hard was it? If, tilers usually having to go out on site to quote, and you maybe got to go and find tiles, and there's obviously a few pieces to that.
Yeah,
quite a bit of time. How hard was it to come up with a solution that would allow you to actually do that without visiting? And
very hard.
Once people figure that out, can't they just do that themselves anyway?
Yeah, it's very hard. There's a the secret sauce of our business is not so much, the fact that we're using technology. It's how we're using it, and it's also the algorithm that's in the background. My father, he works now. He's not a police officer anymore. He works in the Ministry of Health as an investigator, and so one of his mates that works with him writes a lot of the algorithms for like WINS and for other government departments. And so he. My dad said, I'll get my mate to come and help you out. And so we basically got on this spreadsheet, and he basically took what was in my mind with quoting and put it into a spreadsheet. I then played around with it, got it more accurate. He helped me understand how all these algorithms kind of work. So it's a few barbecues, a few beers with this guy, and we ended up creating this algorithm. And then the software developers created like a front end, which is like where you kind of interact with it, where the consumers would interact with our spreadsheet in a way. And what it allowed is that a consumer come online, they choose the area, they put their measurements in, they then choose a tile, share their personal details, and it like right at that moment.
Wow.
They
So-
can get a quote into the email box.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And would that be pretty much fixed if they'd given the accurate measurements,
Yep.
sort of thing? Yeah.
One of the things that we heard, one, when we're doing our investment round, but also one of the things that we thought ourselves is, what if someone puts in the wrong measurements? Now, in the first 2 months, right, $370,000, we had 120 quotes submitted and we had 43 accepted. Now, out of those 43 that were accepted, there was one person that put their measurements wrong. It was a very lovely lady who put in 4 square meters, but it was actually like 4.3, right? Now, usually what would happen is a tradesman would go like this, lick their finger, put it up to the ear and just make up a price.
Yeah.
But for us, we were able to have a level of transparency that was never kind of available before. And I think the customers felt more safe and more empowered that they were getting a good deal. And then I was feeling like I was not ripping them off, and they could see for themselves. So we just go into the system, plug in the right numbers, and that will be the price. So it was a level of transparency that never existed before. Yeah.
Okay, so you had this sort of base tool that was working for you.
Mm-hmm.
Where to from there?
So we have this tool. It's working really well. I'm feeling very out of my depth. I think at this point, I was thinking like, man, where am I? What am I going to be able to do with this? And I had my cousin in my ear giving me ideas. And then I saw this advertisement for Te Puni Kokiri to go to a night class. So I go to the night class. We do the 6-week course where even my wife, she comes along. We all just go along to learn. And some of the stuff was pretty,
What was
basic.
the course?
It was a business night course.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
At Te Puni Kokiri. So Te Puni Kokiri is like the Māori business innovation type, service. They do a range of things, but we engaged with them on this business night course, and it was awesome. We learnt tons of things, and we also were connected to people that were interested in business, and also some of the tutors there were really interested in what we were doing with Tainui.co.nz. A guy called Heta Hudson, who's from Findex. He also runs the Whāriki network, which is a Māori business network. He's super awesome, and he kind of says to us, have you guys ever thought about white labeling this? Have you thought about, and white labeling is like, giving someone software that they can kind of personalize to their own business, and it looks like it's their software.
So as well, so what is tiling.co.nz could also be Canterbury Tiling and
Yes.
Timaru Tiling and Dargaville Tiling Service, or whatever you wanted it to be.
Exactly.
Right.
And he kind of just talks about, that more in depth. And so I've got my cousin saying those things. I've got Heta Hudson, also saying some really awesome things. And so we're like, okay. We put in a few grant applications to CBK. We get connected to ATEED, who help us get connected with Callahan Innovation. And that's kind of like where we first interact with what it could possibly be, at a global scale. They really kind of helped us realize that. I think at that point it was like, so we can add all this value to these businesses. They can save a bunch of time on their quotes. They can make money on tiles. They can, so I'm talking about my fellow tile brothers, but then also we can add, we can build this global business, and I get excited about it. And so I think that's when we kind of were like, me and Jerome. So Jerome had, who's my co-founder. Jerome came from England. He was teaching over in England, and he came to New Zealand. He said, "Hey Josh, I know you're running a tiling business. I wouldn't mind doing something different." And so I said, yeah, sure, come work with me. Now, in my mind, I think he's just going to do office work because, let's be honest, those teacher hands aren't really made for tiling. And he gets to New Zealand, he's thinking he's going to be doing tiling, and he ends up, understanding like what I'm doing here. And he's like, whoa, you're doing all this? Yeah, man, I'm going to go for it. And so I tell him I'm going to go for this opportunity, and if he wants to come along for the ride. And so me and him partner up, and we start to investigate, one, like, what is this? How do you run this? you got to think at this point, I am a guy that pumped petrol wrong into cars. I haystacked, and I painted, and I tiled, and I sung songs to people at weddings. No experience in technology, feeling way out of my depth. Imposter syndrome, yeah, completely.
Which probably, most founders are going to feel,
Totally.
most of us end up outside of our comfort zones, right? In one area or another.
Yeah. And in retrospect, I now look back and I think that's, by having that feeling, and you can either get just consumed by it and taken down. But for me, it was like, okay, let's get learning. Yeah. And we made a ton of mistakes. We kind of were like, okay, well, this tech company built, this MVP or the most viable product.
Minimum viable product,
right?
Usually the term, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So you approached somebody to help you with that?
So, well, we just thought this company had already done that with,
the web company.
Yeah, and so we thought, okay, well, they can do the next step.
Right.
We get to the next step, and we're 3 months later. We're 3 months outside the time they said they're going to get it done, and we are really lost. It's costing us money.
You weren't on a fixed sort of pricing. You're paying.
Well, we
for
were.
the time.
We were, but it's that time that was really costing us. And although we had all these stipulations, like if you go overtime, you're going to be charged. All these things, it's pretty hard to go and get the company that's over in India, right? And what we were able to do is we were able to build a product, somewhat of a product, and we were thinking, okay, well, we're going to launch with this product. And even though we knew it wasn't perfect, we thought we could probably launch with it. Then what happened was I get a call, and it's from Kwotimation. So not Te Puni Kwotimation, now we're just talking about Kwotimation. And it's the Kwotimation Accelerator. And a lady there, Sarah, gave me a call and said, hey, your business, we saw it on Scale Up and I think it'd be a perfect addition to like what we're doing here. Would you mind submitting like a video and a bit of information about your business and put an application in? And so I apply. We then get accepted to go down there and pitch to get in. And in all honesty, I didn't want to do it. At this point, we had been so hurt by, the government agencies we had engaged with, Te Puni Kwotimation, we had been hurt by Callahan Innovation, that when they called, I just thought, waste my time. Yeah, just thought it was waste my time.
Right, because you were telling me the other day you spent about 3 months working with Callahan, and you kind of got you ended up in completely sort of the wrong direction, a lot of wasted time, and which ultimately costs you money, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Like push pause on the story here, like Callahan Innovation, I'm sure there's a ton of success stories that have come from it, but for someone like myself, when I started out in my business and we were starting to think about technology, like I didn't even know who they are. And if you look at their name, Callahan Innovation, like how are you to know who they are and what they do? I know Sir Paul Callahan was the man and all the rest of it, but we don't name, New Zealand rugby after Jonah. We don't do that. We don't call it Jonah Lomu Rugby or Richie McCaw Rugby. We just call it New Zealand Rugby.
What it is.
And
right.
If you go down the street right now, there's very few people that will know who Callahan Innovation and what they do. And the interesting thing that they need to kind of realize is that there are tons of people that are coming from all types of sectors who are solving problems with technology, and these problems are not just being experienced by them, by tons of other people. And the ability to build global businesses from them is massive. And so, people knowing who you are and what you do at Callahan Innovation is super important, because for me, I had no idea who they were and what they did. And when we went to them, they wouldn't back pay us for, the innovation that we had done. And successful innovation, because we had $370,000 of revenue to prove it, in 2 months.
Well, surely you had enough money. You wouldn't need any handouts.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they give handouts to tons of businesses. Like even Xero got $400,000 last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like, it's not about tons of money. It's about being able to have, for everyone to be able to know and have access. And, knowledge is access in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think, like you look at how technology has evolved, and it's becoming like situations where you don't have to know how to code, you don't have to know all that stuff, and you can run a business. Example right here. And I should know who they are before I need to even think about them. And, with social media and with things like that, there's tons of opportunities for these people to get out in front of businesses, get out in front of people and have them know who they are. So if they want to have a stink name, like at least have an awesome social media campaign. Let people know who you are. Yeah.
There you go. I'm sure.
Take that, Callahan.
I'm sure someone's listening to the feedback.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
And I've given them
the
this
multi-million-dollar rebrand exercise is necessarily on the cards for them, Josh. But hey, you just never know, right? And it's good to be able to. It's good to be able to, just tell your story. And
but there's going to be tons
you
of
never
ideas.
know how these things.
There's going to be tons of ideas that are going to come from all different sectors, and if you're not going to back pay, at least get at the front of everyone's mind about who you are. Because if I go do innovation, like in my office building, right? I have myself. We have this little office, and there's an office next door. This guy has received $800,000 of Callahan Innovation money and has failed. He just got another 1.2 from them. It just seems like if you know the right boxes to tick, connected to the right people in there, you can get money and create opportunity for your business and for your whānau. But if you're not connected and you don't know who they are and you don't know what they do, when you go and do successful innovation like what we did, they don't back pay you, but they rather pay ahead to the loser that loses all the money.
Interesting.
Yeah. I just think there's room to grow there. And there's those 2 points, right? Back pay, if you're not going to do that, then get ahead of everyone and make sure that they know who you are, because problems are going to be solved from numpties like me.
Yeah, well, look, and that's the thing is, government in some areas probably is much more focused maybe than what they need to be, right? Because innovation can really come from anywhere. And as a country, we need to be a country that innovates, that builds new things, that we sell, out to a global audience.
Yeah.
And we've got to be doing everything we can to
think of it this way
to
too.
Facilitate that.
We have a lot of exports that come from this country. We take natural things and we take them overseas, and when people go try dive for some crayfish, it's extremely hard sometimes when it never used to be that way, because we're exporting all this stuff to China. The cool thing about technology is you get to export value, right, and get to take from other economies without depleting any of your natural resources.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's an awesome.
Well, we'll certainly look for a chance to have Callahan, involved in a future episode for sure. And look, there's opportunities, right? We need to keep getting out there the information around where people go to and who they go to for help. And that's part of what this show is about, is learning these things and sharing the knowledge around, because I believe that what I would call the futurist mindset, that forward-looking mindset, is for all New Zealanders. We should all be able to dream and innovate and come up with ideas, and we need the systems and the support around us that we can draw on, so that we can move forward as a country.
Totally.
And that that's the futurist hat that I wear when I'm public speaking. But I firmly believe it, and so this is great to hear those insights. So
So apply for Callahan Innovation.
So what was what was the next step from there?
Yeah, so Kokiri, comes. I drag my feet. I don't want to do it. Jerome, though, and my mum, who was actually helping us out at that time.
Thanks, Mum.
Yeah, we all need great mums, eh? I think about it, our journey has been lucky, but has been well supported by whānau, by my mum and dad. And I look back through all my family, even my cousin, right? It's like, we don't live alone, having people like my mum and my father support us has been awesome. So they give us direction. Jerome and my mum said, no, we should do it. And I kind of get outvoted, right? So we go down. We go down.
Outvoted on your own business, your own startup.
There's a first board meeting. We get outvoted and we go. And I drag my feet there. We pitch. We get in. We meet all these other awesome Māori startups. We meet the team there, and they're just amazing, And for the first time, I felt like I was getting some knowledge about what I'm doing and how to do it properly. And it was like doing an apprenticeship again. I did it in tiling, and then it was nice to be able to do like a tech apprenticeship.
Where was that based?
Based in Waikato. The awesome thing about it, though, one of the awesome kind of silver linings of COVID was that this is in March last year, well, maybe April.
March 2020.
Yeah. And we go into lockdown, and they say we're going to do the course, virtually. And so we had a few moments, you kind of remember that timeline back then where we kind of went into heavy lockdown, came out of it. We had some times we could actually get, kanohi te kanohi, face to face, and have some get-togethers. And that was awesome. And then, but the majority of our course was over Zoom. Yeah, and it was awesome. We attended every lesson, every Zoom call. We took notes. We learnt. We took opportunities because you have these people that will come on the call who you never would ever meet in real life, and to be connected with them and to learn from them was very, very empowering and awesome for us.
And so, what did it cost you to participate? What was the what does that side of it look like?
So normal Accelerator, right? They take a percentage of your business. They might give you a bit of cash. They gave us $10,000 of grant money from Callahan Innovation. So kudos to Callahan Innovation supporting the course. They gave us $10,000 cash and a whole lot of knowledge, and it cost us nothing. They don't own any percentage of my business. They just supported us. Yeah, whakawhanaungatanga, that's what it is. And they, honestly, it was an incredible. We were not here if we don't go there. Yeah, I'm not on this podcast if we don't go there.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there are so many. When you look back at the story, and we're still early stage in the startup, right? But there are so many points. People that have come along.
Yeah.
Getting ideas and suggestions. Yeah.
Yeah. Cousin talking to me. Right. Yeah.
All of those things you wouldn't have actually got to this point.
Yeah.
If any of those things hadn't happened. I mean, some of them maybe there's an alternative that would have kept things moving in one way or another. But it's really interesting, isn't it? There's a lot of things that actually have to fall into place.
Yeah.
To pull together a startup and to keep it operating.
It is like that. And I think there was the one characteristic that I've had that has helped us is I've been fearless. I take opportunity if it's there, and I will shoot my shot. If I have a pitch and I have multiple pitches, and this one's more conservative and this one's more risky, I'm gonna take the risky one. I'm gonna shoot my shot. And I think even when it came down to this whole startup journey, that helped. Jerome, he's a bit more conservative, and I'm a bit more like risk taker. And the reason, it's funny. The reason why I'm that way was when I started my business, or when I was going to go into sales, and that builder talked to me. He said to me, Josh, I've lost everything at one point. Before I was around your age, I was 26-ish, and I lost everything. I had gambled all my money away, and I had nothing. And he now runs a business that's quite big, multiple staff, and very big business. And he was saying to me, like, the thing is, I was betting on the wrong thing. What I should have betted on is myself. He said, the reason why is that if I bet on myself, it's like playing Russian roulette, but you kind of gamble, right? But then you get to, like, while the game is playing out, you can color in the roulette table black. You get your marker out and color it in. And how you do that is by your hard work. So your hard work changes the odds. And that was a really empowering thing for me, because it was like, so I can gamble on myself. My hard work changes my odds. And I just had that in me to just like gamble, to just take my shot. Don't hold back. There's no loss. And so far in our journey, I haven't seen a loss from like just going for it. Yeah,
that's great. And there's a reality here, Josh, where you and I both know, we've talked about this, that with startups, they don't all succeed, right?
Yeah.
But even if it doesn't succeed, actually, all the learnings and those bits and pieces become valuable, because you said it to me before that hey, you don't have complete control. And I can't remember your words on it, but you don't you're not 100% sure how things are gonna turn out, but obviously you're there filling in those squares and
working hard
and working really hard to get a great outcome.
And the thing is, one of the things that's really awesome is that, like, we live in New Zealand, okay, and if I fail in my business, do they cut my legs off? Do they send me to Antarctica? Does my wife just divorce me? No. Like, I still have a daughter. I'm still married. I still live in the greatest country in the world, and I still have my 2 arms and my 2 legs. It's okay. It's okay to fail. For me, I've made peace that if I fail, I fail. But I'm going to do everything in my power to win.
That's the key, isn't it? That's the key.
Yeah.
You're going to,
But I think it allows you to be more bold and to take your shots.
Yeah. You're going to do everything you can to succeed. It's great. So,
Kokiri.
Yeah. So from there, you hadn't had to give anything away. What did your shareholding look like at this stage? You obviously, because you've set up a legal entity.
Yeah. That was really good too.
Who are your shareholders?
One of the things that we learned in the course is around how cap tables should look, what's attractive, and we had
what are cap tables for those that aren't familiar?
It's basically like Josh owns 10% and Bill owns 5%, and so what we were able to do is able to learn how to structure that to be attractive for investment. And at that point, we weren't super keen on getting investment. We had some really awesome, we had investors come on there, and Rob, who's actually our lead investor, was our lead investor in our pre-seed round. Rob Vickery from Hillfarrance, he actually came onto the course and was giving some really helpful advice. So what happened was we are learning about the cap tables. I then ended up we kind of sorted out internally for our team how it's going to all work, who's going to have what. We sort that all out, and then we start looking at what our next steps are. And even though we weren't looking at investment, we were having all these awesome conversations with Rob, and it kind of led to, after a few this and that's, where it ends up leading to him being our lead investor. So that's what I'm saying, like we would not be in this position if it wasn't for going to that corporate accelerator.
Yeah.
So getting outvoted is good.
And so that next stage of getting investment, you talked to a few parties. How did that look? You obviously had a connection with Rob.
Yeah.
No doubt there were one or more others that you spoke to or looked at.
Interesting thing. So maybe push pause and we talk about investment for a while. before we went to the Corporate Accelerator, we went to Flying Kiwi Angels. They run these ADI clinics, and we had...
What clinics?
It's called ADI clinics. I don't even know what it stands for. Sorry, mate.
No, just curious. You know me, I always like to get rid of the acronyms and find out. And sometimes I know the answer, but just to break it down.
Do you know what it means?
But I don't know what that one is.
We'll have to ask them. But they run these clinics where basically you come in and you pitch your idea, and they kind of give you advice, and maybe they actually want to invest in your business as well. So we come into the room, we do our pitch. Obviously, we are not informed with how tech companies run. We're not informed at how they grow, and so we say a lot of silly things in that meeting. And they basically give us a bit of advice and say no. You know, they say, nah, it's probably not for us. You guys have achieved something pretty good with Time.co.nz, but that's kind of where it stops, right? We then go to the Accelerator. We learn a bunch of stuff. We then meet Rob on the course, have some really cool discussions. And Rob's going through an interesting stage then, because he wasn't living in New Zealand at that point. He was actually living in LA. And so I think for him it was like a real opportunity to like talk with some Indigenous founders from Aotearoa, get a kind of feel for what was out there. And he met us, and he was just really impressed with our simple solution for a problem that has really existed since the beginning of time, and he kind of saw the blue ocean that we were in, which is really kind of alluding to the fact that there's no one else doing what we're doing, and so he decided to become our lead investor. We then go back to the Flying Kiwi Angels, and they decide to invest in us this time. So, go before, they say no, we come back with a much better plan, and a lead investor, they're on board. And we then go and pitch at a few other events. So what happens typically is they'll have these angel nights. Angel investors are basically high net worth individuals that belong to a club of investors, and they'll hear a pitch from an entrepreneur, and they will collectively, make their investments, and so the club will invest on their behalf.
Yep.
And it was very awesome, and it really, one of the things that helped us when we were going around and pitching was, one, shoot your shot, right? Be bold. But the other thing was getting a better understanding of your business. That's what it helped you do, because you're going to get asked tough questions, from people who have been there and done that. Who is, your CTO? How is your tech stack? How you plan to do your tech stack? Tons of questions like that.
Did you get a lot? How well prepped were you?
Very well prepped. Yeah.
Yeah. So who helped you with getting your head around what those things were you were going to be asked?
Corporate Accelerator.
Yeah.
Like and there were a bunch of people on that Accelerator who are experts in their field, right? And they come in and they help you. I can't talk up that course enough. It was the number one thing that I would attribute our success to. Yeah, the Corporate Accelerator. Without them, we don't pitch to investors. We don't even know what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, you should have heard our ideas before.
That's high praise.
Our ideas before going to the Corporate Accelerator was, in 2 months' time, we'll be in America.
In 2 months' time.
Yeah. The Corporate Accelerator just put so much structure around us, helping us understand, doing stuff like validation interviews. I had such a arrogant perspective to that. I just thought, I just thought, nah, we don't need to do validation interviews. I am a tiler. I understand the problem. But when we went and talked to tilers, and we understood the problem even better. Yeah.
And you've got to get those different perspectives too, right?
Yeah.
Because you might think that, you completely know that space, and then you talk to somebody else, and their perspective, I imagine, is going to be at least slightly different from yours.
Yeah. And then, in that same kind of stroke, getting perspectives on how to do tech stacks, getting perspectives on how to do, So
you're talking about deciding on the underlying technologies that you were gonna go with, right? Because that's a really strategic decision.
Yeah.
And, in fact, the chat that we've had recently with Mark Rees, Chief Technology Officer at Xero, he was telling us how he's just spent 3 years making a change to the underlying technology framework of Xero. Three years of their history as a business to make that change. So that's something you want to spend a bit of time on, because the impact, and not that you can always get these things right all the time or get the perfect result, but you want to make your best bet, and hopefully you get the right advice and the right things, and you make a good decision that you're not going to have to turn around and rip everything apart and
totally.
As I say, sort of rebuild your airplane while it's flying and so on, which is rather challenging.
And at the same time, hiring good people so that if you do have to rebuild certain things, it's possible. Like having Mark on your team. I mean, it's a pretty hard job if you don't have Mark on your team, right? And with us, we've got some awesome, bright individuals. We have Sophia Willows, who is a massive reason why we were able to go to investors with our backup and say, we've got Sophia. We have Tana Isaac. He's our VCTO. I mean, even this is going to blow you away. So my cousin is our VCTO. He was the CTO of Parts Trader, which was they've raised tons of money. They're all over the world, and they basically work in the mechanic type work, sourcing parts. Here's my cousin.
So he's your virtual chief technology officer who's there to, fulfill that role. Yeah. Even though obviously not something that you need and probably even necessarily want to spend on having someone full time for where you are at this stage in the startup.
So we get that kind of quality guy.
Yeah.
And it's my cousin. I used to play rugby with this guy, and I remember he used to sit across the room from me, and in the changing room, we're getting changed stuff, and I'll be like, "Hey, cuz, what have you been doing?" He's like, "Oh, I've been doing, this." I think he's talking about his technology, and I'm just boring. The next question, it's the most boring thing to me. And then one day, I remember actually he was leaving to Chicago. He's going to go and work over there. And I was like, "What is it you do again?" He told me. I was like, "Boring," because this is boring to me. And then when we started our tech business, I was like, "What is it you do again?"
Suddenly it wasn't so boring.
Oh, I mean, like you look at our story from beginning to the end, we are not here without our whānau, and we are not here with a few things going our way. It's and we have a massive opportunity because of my whānau, and that's why at the beginning I was doing my people. I was getting a bit emotional when I talk about Nena. Yeah, because it is a really cool story. Yeah.
So here we are, April 2021. Josh, Kwotimation is the business. Yeah, it's an early stage startup, really at this stage. What do you see the picture looking like? I'm just looking online. I see that between you and your co-founder, you own 80-something% of the business. So you've got investors that have come in and taken their slice, but you're probably going to need some more investment. Yeah. So you got that stage. You've raised, was it 500,000? Yeah. Already. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that believe in what you're doing. And they've put in a lot of money on the basis this is going to end up being quite a sizable business, right? Yeah. They're betting on you. Yeah. I'm sure your family are certainly hoping this thing heads in the right direction. So how do you sort of see that playing out from this point? Yeah. And what do you think's expected of you? Well, from the outside parties?
First of all, our investors are awesome, from Rob being our lead investor all the way to, Flying Kiwi Angels, even we invested in a ton of angel groups in New Zealand. We've had a ton of help from these people too. Their money is one thing, but when you look at their help that is equally valuable. Rob comes from some experience with the trades industry in England. We have people who are connected to tradespeople, and just having those relationships is super important for us at this stage. Also, these guys that are investing in our business have also built businesses, and so to have their input is very, very valuable. So now we want to prove them right. We want to add value to these businesses. I know what it's like to be a tiler, and I know what it's like to encounter the problem of quoting. But I also know the feeling of what I felt when I was driving home from the office and I didn't have to go do 4 quotes that night. When I looked into my weekend, I didn't have to do 2 quotes in the weekend or something.
Probably pretty easy for you to sell this to any tiler, right? That has to deal with that right now, because you've got that emotional connection to what is the upside to using technology to solve this problem. And this is one of the things I love about technology, Josh. If we use technology well, we're innovative, we use it for good things, then the impact improves people's their lives. Improves the what the situation is like for their family. And when you improve what happens for a family, that flows onto the community. It flows onto the country.
Yeah.
That's why you want to get this stuff right, because it has a huge flow.
Oh, a huge impact. Even from not driving cars and just tons of impacts that kind of at the macro level, very big. But I think one of the things that it is easy to sell to these tilers, but one, we don't want to sell crap. And 2, they're trusting us with one of the most important things in their business, which is pricing. And we don't want to just sell a product. We want to add value. And so I think when I look at what we're trying to do and try to prove our investors right, try to prove like I said before, our whānau right, it's about adding value to these businesses. And if we fail to add value, we won't be here next year. If we can add value to these businesses and they stay on board with us, then we can build a business that can help more people. And that's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I really enjoyed this chat, Josh. I think there's going to be a lot more to the story.
Yeah.
And
that's one of the cool things, right?
So I want to ask you to come back. I'm going to ask you that now. And this is sort of win or lose, regardless. Because there are things you're going to learn. And look, I guess my my hope is very much that this is very, very successful, and I'm seeing a lot of great indicators here, and you will have heard it said that investors invest in people, right?
Yeah.
It's the idea that that's all part of it. But I'm talking to someone who's convincing me you're the right sort of person to do the job. And the idea sounds really good. Yeah. Look, I don't know all of the sort of fundamentals and numbers, and we haven't delved into any of that outside of this chat. But those things are pretty encouraging. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the next stage, hearing some of those hard stories, because that's inevitably part of this. And I know there've been challenges you've had already. As we've covered a little bit of that off. But you've worked hard to learn and to fill in the gaps, and a key part of it is mindset and attitude, isn't it? That just that willingness to go, well, I don't know this, so I'm going to find out how to find out, and then you go and do it. So it's good.
It's a balance of like caring and not caring, listening and not listening. It's interesting when you look at like someone like Ford, right? Henry Ford. You look at their business, and what he said was, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And he obviously created the car, and look at what it is now. It's so popular. And I think for us, you've got to listen, but then you've also got to know when not to listen. It's a really difficult balance.
Have you had some bad advice that you really had to work around?
We've had bad advice for sure, Callahan Innovation, we had some bad advice. Like one of the bad advice we had was we got advice that, be careful of investors in New Zealand, they're racist. And that has not at all been our experience. Our experience is that investors are looking for companies that can add value. If they can add value, they can build a business. If they can build a business, that with technology here in Aotearoa in New Zealand, they could build a business globally. And so far, our experience has been, that investors are not racist. Now, we've got some stories to tell. I have experienced racism in my life. It's ignorant not to think that those things exist, and there were things in our story, with investors. They're not perfect. We had this Zoom call. Be careful, I say here. It was with a group of investors, and one of the investors asked me. He said, "Josh, as a Māori, as soon as someone asks you that question, that statement at the start, Josh, as a Māori, oh no, here we go. Josh, as a Māori, you guys often like to take your time making decisions. You often quite diplomatic in how you do it. Lots of advice and whatnot. And so what that results in is not much hui, or too much hui and not enough dewey." And
how do you respond to that?
Well, obviously I said to him, I'm not going to get polarized by your perspective of my culture, but here's how we make decisions. And in our business, how we make decisions is we use ICE, which is impact, cost, and ease. So we ask ourselves, should we do this? Well, here's the impact, here's the cost, here's the ease. We rank it and we make decisions. But I'm not going to get polarized by your perspective of my culture. We just make decisions depending on, if we've got lots of time, we'll take lots of time. If we don't have much time, we'll make decisions quickly. We try to build a team that is diverse in opinion, background, and it allows us to have a better perspective of a certain subject. And so that's what we're trying to build in Kwotimation. And then obviously so after we answered that question, he asked another question that was very similar to that. So, Josh as a Māori, And I said the same thing, made it more clear, like, I'm not going to get polarized by your perception of my culture, and then answered the question. And then after the meeting, there was a lot of, outspill. A ton of investors that were on the call, very upset. I mean, that's enough, right, for you to see where New Zealand's at. People don't like that stuff. They don't like to see that stuff. And they were very supportive of us. They were very angry that it happened to us. I was angry. Went home. Jerome was angry. Went home, talked to my wife. My wife slowly put my fists down. And she talked me off for the cliff. Then we were like, okay, how do we handle this? And on this note, people make mistakes. They say things that are wrong. But if we don't have a path for redemption, we don't have a path for reconciliation, then two wrongs don't make a right. And what we wanted to do, what we came up with after talking to my wife, was we want reconciliation. We want him to see that this was wrong. We want him to apologize, and then we want to move forward. And so, in front of him the next morning, told him what happened. Told him, hey, you said this. And funny enough, this investor wanted to invest with us. That's why we had a Zoom call in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. And I said this thing to him. I said, you said this. And he as soon as he said what he said, he was like, I'm so sorry. That's so wrong. I can't believe. He said, I was trying to do a compliment and ask a hard question at the same time. And it came mucked up. And I said to him, you know what? I'll take you at your word. And you apologise to everyone that was on that call and restore our mana. Because at the moment, our mana is hurt and your mana is hurt because everyone thinks you're a racist. And I don't think you hate me. So let's get this thing rolling. He apologized. He even apologized publicly on LinkedIn. And we got it sorted. And he is an investor in our business. He's helping us build our business. And we look forward to a long relationship with him. That would not have happened if we just got patus out and started smacking people and started getting angry. And so, for us, there's been this one little experience, but everywhere else, everyone has been really welcoming. They've been trying to, and can I say one other thing on that, cool? That was interesting is that after we had people outraged, right? Rightly so, people upset. But then we also had I remember this one call that I got the next day, and this investor just talked shop with me. He just said, "Hey Josh, I like your idea, man. Listen, I've got a bunch of questions for you. Well, this, and you know what? And all of the madness that was taken around us, people calling me angry, upset, want to do this, want to do that. It was nice just to shut up and talk shop, and that's what we're here to do.
Get on with it.
We're not here to be a political group. We're not here for any of that. We are here to build a business. We're here to be. I am Māori, but I run a business. I am Tukalauan, but I run a business. I have brown skin, but I run a business, and I'm here to build a business that changes people's lives and becomes one of New Zealand's biggest businesses in the world because it adds tons of value to our constituents. That's all we're here to do.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, by the way, because we need to hear these things, and we need to hear perspectives, but also the grace in which you ultimately handled that situation.
Yeah.
Because look, all of us are going to put a foot wrong at some stage, one way or another.
And don't buy the lies. Like people. I mean, there are people that said that these investors are racist. I'm not trying to be mean to them, but their business idea sucked. That's the reason why they won't get investments. I think investors at the core of them are racist. They like the color green. They want to make money. They want to make money. So if you're the type of person that's got an idea and they believe in your idea, they believe in your team, they believe that you guys they're going to give you money. And for us, our investors believe in what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Josh. I'm going to look forward to the next iteration of this, as I'm sure
Cheers,
listeners will. A huge thank you to our show partners, Vocus, HP, Spark, Vodafone, Gorilla Technology, and Umbrella Connect for being able to keep the New Zealand Tech Podcast on the air and streaming and out for people to listen to through their podcast apps, and carrying all of the costs of making this happen. So
thank you guys. Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And look, it's so good having companies that are behind the tech community, startup community, innovation here in New Zealand, and making these things possible. And and I will say there's all sorts of players. Callahan play their part.
They play.
Te Puna Kōkiri, the Kōkiri,
yep.
And so many others. And not everything's gonna kind of work how we want it to.
Be perfect all the time.
But together, hopefully we get some great outcomes.
I'm sure everyone will grow.
And through sharing these stories, we move forward, right? And
Totally.
And we help others come along, and achieve their wins. So thanks for sharing these insights. It's been great, Josh.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Great.
We actually met on Clubhouse. And,
we did, yeah.
And here
social audio platform, which probably very few people will have heard of. A few listeners to the podcast, because we've done a little bit through Clubhouse, and
awesome.
And the chat with Mark Rees from Zero we did on Clubhouse as well.
Cool.
But yeah, that's us now. People that are interested in some way in Kwotimation. What's the best way to get in touch? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Is it your website?
We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. It's a bit of a difficult one to spell, but it's Kwotimatin, Tion. And if you're
We'll put a link up on the NZ Tech Podcast site anyway, so people can find your website and so on.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys listening. Yeah, it's awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
Well, all the best for the next stage.
Yeah, we'll see you again soon, mate.
Good stuff. Hey, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll catch you on the next episode of the New Zealand Tech Podcast.
New Zealand Tech Podcast, the voice of the tech community, proudly supported by Umbrella Connect.